So if you're looking for a really fun, easy game to play with children, preparing them for phonics, or once they've started using phonics to help them to learn to read, then this is the video for you. For more than a decade, I've trained thousands of practitioners, teachers and parents in how to teach phonics and early reading spectacularly well. And on this channel I'm sharing heaps of phonics games, reading activity ideas and top tips with you. So subscribe to my channel to add a bit of sparkle into your phonics and early reading teaching. And don't forget to click the bell to be notified for new videos every single Thursday. One of the things that's really crucial to children's success in phonics is their ability to remember. So their ability to remember letter shapes and also their letter name, so that's a letter S, and also to remember their letter sounds. So that's a letter S and it makes the sound S, the phoneme S. So that's one part of the remembering. They've got to have a really good visual memory and they've got to have a really good auditory, so a good memory of things that they hear to be able to do well in phonics. The other side is that they have to be able to also be able to remember those sounds as they read them and to be able to hold them in their head long enough to read a whole word. So it's fine reading that by itself, and it's fine reading that's an I by itself, an I making an I, and this is a T making a T. It. I've got to, if I'm reading that's a T, I've got to remember in my head that I've already read S and I, and I've just read T. So I've got to have the whole thing in my head, and that requires a lot of remembering. So first up, I'm going to give you an example of a game that I would play with preschoolers to get them thinking about their auditory and visual memories in a very basic way. And you'll notice that I'm using real objects. If you look at this video here, I talk a lot about why I use real objects, and also in that video you'll find even more simple practical games that you can play with preschoolers to get them ready for phonics. But for now, let's get started with a simple memory game that we can play in nursery and preschool classes to get them ready for phonics. So for this really simple nursery version of this memory game, we're going to be using real objects and we're going to be practicing hearing and saying the separate sounds in words, so orally blending and segmenting within this game. So we've got 3 words here: pen, net and nine, and they've all been chosen because they've got the letter N making the N sound, but at different places in the words. So we've got a pen, p, e, N, with the N making an N sound at the end of that word. We've got a net, N, et, with the N making an N sound at the beginning of that word. And we've got the number 9, N, I, N, with an N making an N sound at the beginning and at the end of that word. So the children are going to be encouraged to listen really carefully to where they hear that N sound, and they're going to be joining in with the oral blending and segmenting as we play the game. So the first thing that we need to do is practice saying these words, because we need to practice what they sound like at the same time as looking at them, because this is a memory game. In a minute one of these objects is going to disappear and the children are going to need which one it is. So I would encourage the children first of all to join in all together. Pen, net, nine. Pen, net, nine. Pen, net, nine. Pen, net, nine. Pen, net, nine, to really encourage them to remember what they can see in front of them. Then we're going to say some magic words. Abracadabra. One of the objects has disappeared. Which one could it be? Well, we've got a pen and a 9. Now, if you've got some children who are really good, have a really good visual memory, then they'll remember what their net looks like. They'll be able to picture it in that slot, and this will be really easy for them. If you've got some children who've got really good auditory memory, really good memory for things that they hear, then they will also be able to recognise that from that pattern that we were saying, pen, net, 9, pen, net, 9, that there's a net missing. So this helps all kinds of learners to be able to remember. So what I would encourage the children to do is first of all talk to each other about what could be missing. Could it be the pen? Could it be the 9? Could it be the net? I'd encourage them to talk to each other and maybe take some feedback. But before we reveal the object that's missing, we need to think about how we would say that by saying each of the separate sounds. So we've got p, e, n, and we've got n, I, n. The missing object was a net. How would we say net? N, et. So I'd practice saying that a few times with the children. N, et, n, et, n, et. Then have a quick drum roll to reveal the net. So we'd carry on playing in this way. We'd have another practice of all of the words. Pen, net, 9, pen, net, 9, pen, net, 9. And then this time after we say abracadabra, the pen's going to disappear. So again, we're going to talk to each other, take some feedback. Which object was it? Agree that it was the pen. How would we say the separate sounds, the separate phonemes in the word pen? P, e, n. Have a practice a few times all together. P, e, n, p, e, n, p, e, n. Quick drum roll. Then we can check that if we were right. Now, if we were with younger children where we were learning English as for the first time, we could just purely use this as a naming activity. So we could just be learning the words. So if you've got some children who are new to English and you're wanting them to be able to name objects, we don't even need to blend and segment. We can just name the objects. Also, if we were with younger children who were learning that sounds match objects, we could use animals. Say from the farm, we could have a cow and a dog and a cat, and we could make the sounds that match the animals rather than the sounds that match the letters. So a few different ways of being able to play that game. Now, this is a perfect game to play with a whole class or a large group of children because we're using slides. But I wonder what that would look like if we had a smaller group of children. So I will play the game in exactly the same way, just using real objects and a magic cloth to hide them to reveal something which is missing, and we've got to guess what it might be. Now we're going to play the same game, but we're going to make it a bit harder to play with reception or with kindergarten children. So we're going to play this simple reading game in exactly the same way that we played the picture memory game, this time with an emphasis on matching the written letters with the spoken sounds and reading whole words. So you can see from my example here that I've picked my words with great intention. I've thought about that I need some words with D at the beginning making a D sound and some words with a D at the end of them making a D sound in exactly the same way that I picked the objects carefully. And you can also see that I've got two words that end in the same way but not using a D, they ended with a G, making the G sound. So again, that's encouraging the children to look even more closely. Now, because this is a lesson where I'm teaching the D, making the D sound, that's the main aim of this session, to learn that new letter sound combination match. I've highlighted them in red to help the children out, to get them to really focus on that new learning. And before we begin the game, what we need to do is practice isolating each of those separate sounds in the words and blending them back together to read them. So we're going to do that all together, all of the children joining in. So we would practice reading them first. D, og, dog. D, ad, dad. D, ig, dig. We do that a couple of times just to check that the children can actually read those words by recognising the letters and blending them back together. Once we've done that, the next thing we need to do is rehearse those words in the same way that we practice saying the pictures to help the children to remember them. So, dog, dad, dig. Dog, dad, dig. Again, I would encourage the children to be all joining in together because this is helping their memory. Dog, dad, dig. Dog, dad, dig. One more time. Dog, dad, dig. And in exactly the same way that we played before, one of the words is going to disappear. Abracadabra, it's gone. Dog, dad. And in exactly the same way, some children will be able to remember visually what's missing, the word dig. Some children will remember from the sequence that we've just practiced saying because they've got more of an auditory memory. Dog, dad, dig. So they'll pick it up that way. Either way, I would encourage the children to talk to one another and come to a bit of a conclusion about what the word might be missing. And then we can maybe take some feedback, pick a couple of children to give us their ideas. Then we've got two options. We can either, if the children are still at that stage of reading rather than writing, get them to tell us by segmenting the missing word dig out loud. D-I-G, dig. Can they say it and I'll write it? I can be the model. Or I can say, dog, dad, dig. You think it's dig, can you write it down for me? So they could either write it on whiteboards or on notepads. Dog, dad, dig. And I can help them out by segmenting that word or sounding that word out for them so that they can hear each of those separate sounds as they write them. Dog, dad, dig. So let's assume the children have either written or told me the word and I've written it. Dog, dad, dig. Drum roll. And then we can check that our spelling was correct. D-I-G, dig. So you could play it with magnetic letters if you felt that the children weren't very confident with the writing and the formation of the letters. Or you could play this in a small group using cards rather than the words on the screen, using exactly the same process. So the science of learning tells us that by playing games like this over and over again helps children to much more efficiently transfer that new learning into their long-term memories. And by playing those kinds of games over and over again, it means that children make more rapid progress. They pick up their letter sounds and whole words much more quickly. And equally important to that, they're having fun at the same time. So in exactly the same way that we've played in nursery and in reception or in kindergarten, here we've got an example of something that we would play in year 1 or first grade. And this is taking the E sound, the E and the E phoneme, and comparing it with an E split digraph. So E and E split with a letter in the middle that still make the E sound. So just as before, the words have been picked really intentionally. We've got an E and an E digraph in sleep and green. And you can see in both of those words that they start with two consonants together. So a G and an R and an S and an L. And that's because children find those really, really hard to hear, to separate when they're spelling. So the more words we can use with those in, the better. Also, we've got two different words with the E splits digraph. One of them is really long. Complete can look quite overwhelming to children, so it's a good idea to throw longer words in as a bit of a challenge. We will play this game in exactly the same way to build up memory. We'd go through the words first so that we knew that the children could see them and could read them before we played, and we would do exactly the same thing for reading and for spelling. So that you can get started straight away, I've put a link down below to all of the slides and the resources that I've used in this session. Plus there's instructions in case you need to be able to explain how to play these games to somebody else. If you're looking for more planning or activity inspiration, there's some more on my website and in my TES store, so you can maybe check out there if you're short of ideas or you want a bit of inspiration, want to try and mix things up a bit and make things a bit more exciting for you and for the children. So if you've liked today's games, don't forget to give them a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to be notified for more phonics inspiration, ideas and top tips coming to you every Thursday.